Good morning. Welcome to the Dunn Wisdom Morning Show. Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you're having a great, productive morning so far. I am Melissa P. Dunn, CEO of MD Marketing Network and founder of this Dunn Wisdom movement. You know, I love to introduce you to women who are getting it done in life and in the community, as well as in business. And today's guest is someone who I consider a personal mentor. She is a leader in South Florida, making a huge impact and leading an organization with staff who are committed to doing the same. I'm going to introduce you this morning to someone who perhaps needs no introduction to some of you in Broward County. She is the CEO of the Urban League of Broward County. Help me welcome Dr. Germaine Smith-Baugh. Hey, Dr. Baugh, how are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I
I
am
love the energy.
I am well. I'm so happy that you're able to take time out of your schedule to spend some time with us this morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to be here.
So, Dr. Germaine, what's better for me to call you Dr. Germaine, Dr. Smith-Baugh? What works?
I guess it might sound a little gangster, but if you were a part in the Urban League staff, they call me Dr. G.
So Dr. G. Oh, yes, honey. Dr. G. I love it.
A little gangster, but it works.
Get behind that. I can definitely get behind that. So tell us a little bit about the Urban League, just to put context to the conversation.
Yeah, so thanks so much once again, Melissa, for this opportunity to share and to be with you this morning. So the Urban League of Broward County is an affiliate of the National Urban League in New York. So when you think about urban leagues, you think about organizations that are focused on the development of people, families, children that are primarily in the areas of education, entrepreneurship, jobs, justice, housing, and health. So we provide direct services in those 6 primary areas. We've been in this community for over 45 years, since 1975. We serve over 14,000 children and families on an annual basis. And like you said, we are truly committed to the idea of how do we help people move toward greater levels of self-sufficiency, providing those resources and tools that folks need to be successful. And that is something that is repeated across the nation and across the state of Florida. There are actually 9 urban leagues in the state of Florida. Really exciting.
Wonderful. And of course, you know, my favorite one is the one in Broward. No shade.
None.
So Dr. G, help me to understand your journey. Have you always wanted to be in the nonprofit space?
So I would tell you that growing up, or at least my first thought of going off to college, was to be an architect. I wanted to be.
Yeah, I did not know that.
I wanted to be an architect. I was accepted to the University of Miami School of Architecture, their 5-year program. I attended for a year. And frankly, Melissa, I would speak better and more than I could draw. So that was like a thought, like, maybe this is not for me. But the reason that I wanted to be an architect was because I had read a book called Kafir Boy that gave the story of an apartheid South Africa from a Black 10-year-old perspective. And in my time, I knew that apartheid would end. I graduated from high school in 90. And as a result of that, I said, man, I could become an architect, move to South Africa and rebuild all these shanty towns, and make like this big change. So I think it has like this funny, humorous sense, like, okay, good plan, great thought. But now I see it come full circle in being an architect of community and to make changes, in that way. So I think life comes full circle when you just open yourself up to what your gifts really are. And drawing was not the gift.
Wow. It's so funny how a book was what opened that possibility for you.
Yeah. And I think it was, when as I recall it, so I would have read this book probably my junior year in high school. It was just the idea that that was injustice that needed to be fixed. I can look back
Mm.
on it now and look at it that way, not so much the practical way that I probably interpreted it to move toward that career path. But looking back now, I can realize that it was really the issue that this is not right. We can do something about it, and let's use whatever skills, knowledge, abilities
Balance.
that you have to make that happen.
Wow. I really believe, Dr. G, that God plants seeds in us along our journey. And sometimes it's not until we are where you are that you look, that's when the seed was planted. That's what that means. So he was trying to tell you, you are going to be an architect, but not in a traditional way, but an architect of community. And I would dare say that the work that you do at the Urban League is helping other people to be architects of their own lives and their families.
Absolutely. And that's the goal. Because as I say to people all the time that, the Urban League is here as what people would consider to be a legacy institution, right? But when we think about the power of the Urban League is exactly as you just shared. How do we get people to be able to move forward in their own lives and be architects of their own situation?
Mm-hmm.
Resiliency is what's the most important factor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then you switched your major from architecture to what?
So I switched majors and I also switched schools because University of Miami was way too expensive to not end with an architectural degree. So I ended up at now my alma mater, Florida State University. So at Florida State University, I got my undergrad in business communication and my graduate work was in social work and public administration.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I'm actually taking 4 Lauderhill girls next week to Broward Days with me, and Florida State is one of the places that we're going to tour.
Gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you that Florida State, or that experience of being in Tallahassee, was ultimately transformational on many levels. But one of the things I'm most proud about in terms of being in Tallahassee, and I guess I should, other than meeting my husband at Florida A&M University, that's important.
Oh, stop.
Yeah, 30
Look
years
at
later.
that.
Yeah, so I guess I had to get to Tallahassee to get that done. But the thing that I'm most proud about in terms of being a part of Florida State University is not the 2 degrees that I got from there. Important, yes. But my most proud is being the founder of an organization called Sisters. And that organization, which was birthed literally in a dorm room, has hundreds of thousands of members, and will be celebrating its 30th year this year.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So when we talk about legacy, Dr. G, I mean, your life has been allowing God to move through you in a way that's constantly leaving room for other people to find themselves.
I think so. And to your point, you don't really realize it until you're looking back, right? And I think the opportunity is that we're putting one foot in front of each other every day. But when you are clear about that purpose, then you get to say what you just said. Oh my gosh, it did make room for other people. Sisters as an organization 30 years later with thousands of members, women members, that wasn't the thought in the dorm room at Smith Hall. It was, how do we connect as women? And then this has taken on a life of its own, multiple chapters across the United States, across particularly Florida, the eastern side of the United States, and then graduate chapters. We didn't have that thought. We were just, we need to connect as women. And how do we do that? But I think once you get clear about purpose, the rest of the universe begins to align.
How would you advise a woman on getting clear of her purpose? Like what steps did you take to figure that out for yourself? Dr. G? All right. Okay. Are you still with me? Yeah, it looks like you froze for a minute. So the question was, what
Sorry
steps?
About that.
Oh, no worries.
I don't know what happened there.
No worries. Technology, right?
Technology at
Yeah.
its best.
So the question was, what steps did you take to discover your purpose?
That's a good one. I think one of the things that I would say is that I really believe there's a scripture that says your gifts will make room for you. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that when you really understand what your gifting is, so one of my gifts is to make complicated simple, right? To take things that just seems like it's moving all over the universe and just boil it down to its essence and then give it to people, right? Like we can do this and then make people excited about whatever the this is, right?
Yeah.
Once you get clear about what your gifting is, then I think that that part of your purpose becomes much more evident, right? And then what you really have joy around. I'm really, I don't,
Mm.
it's fleeting. There are days that I feel happy and, giggly, all of that. But it's the
Mhm.
joy that we're looking for,
Yeah.
right? That joy, that inner peace that is just like, even if what around me seems chaotic and even not good, if I have a peace, a joy around what I'm doing, I know that I'm heading in the right direction. When that joy is lost, that means I have to go back and get my center, correct. And then I guess the other thing around purpose is to be really clear about your values because they will get tested
Yes.
a lot. Um, and once they get tested, I say to the young people at my church, one of the things that's really important is we're always juggling all kinds of different balls, right? Glass balls and rubber balls. Those glass balls are those values that we hold very dearly, very importantly. And then you have those rubber balls, which are, just the everyday things in life. You could drop those rubber balls all day because they will bounce back. But when you drop those glass balls, you never
Mm.
in the same beauty that they were given to you. So I really hold on to those glass balls as much as I can. And one of like for me, a glass ball for me is like integrity. But it's not
Yes.
just integrity from the sense like how people talk about it, like just telling the truth. That's simple. That to me, that's simple. Integrity for me is your yes is your yes. Your when I sign something, it means something. I have walked away from significant resources because I knew that when I put my name on it, I couldn't go out into community and say what I really wanted to say. So I'm just like, not gonna do that. You're gonna have
Hello.
to have those resources because I have to be free to be who and what it is I want to be.
Yes.
And then sometimes you just have to, you have those balances. I'm not always great at it, but I think those values and being understanding what your glass balls are is important. And then
Mhm.
communicating that to other people. And the last point I'll say on that, Melissa, is that once you begin to communicate those values, what your gifts are, and so forth, other people begin to just lay things out on a platter for you and be like, I see you. And here it is because you are being consistent in those things and they know they can trust you.
Oh my gosh, that is so powerful, Dr. G. And I talk about that all the time too, is understanding what your core values are.
Hmm.
And so to find purpose, you said identify your gifts, lean into your joy. And
Hmm.
once you feel peace and joy, that tells you kind of that you're on the right track. And then just be aware of what your core values are
Yep.
and be consistent in
Yep.
practicing and living them.
Absolutely.
Oh,
It at least
that's
helps a little bit.
yeah, no, that's really powerful. And that's the way that I live my life too, which is probably why I you and I are so aligned
Yeah.
in so many ways, in so many
Mhm.
ways. So when did you start working with the Urban League?
Wow. So I started working with the Urban League in 1996. So
Oh
this,
wow.
yeah, so this will be what, my 27th year at the Urban League. So the the I started at the Urban League working in an all-girls program called ARTS, Arithmetic, Reading, Technology, and Science for Girls.
Mm-hmm.
It was at Sunland Park Elementary and Martin Luther King Elementary, funded by the Department of Juvenile Justice. The entire budget, Melissa, including my salary and benefits, was a whopping $50,000. Yeah, yeah, serving 50 girls and their families. So I often joke with folks now that tell me, "Oh, this is impossible. Oh, we can't do this." I said, "Yes, we can. We can figure this
Because
out.
you've been there, done that.
Been there, done that. We can figure this out, right? With much less resources. These days, folks, if we're doing a family event, they want to get a DJ and they want to have it catered and they want to have
Mm-hmm.
this. Girl, back in the day, I used to take a 5-pound box of chicken, divide it up to all the different little parents and say, clean it, season it however you want, bring it to the park and we're going to grill it, right? Because again, didn't have a lot of money, right?
You had to make it work.
You got to make it work. And I think that resourcefulness definitely comes from my parents and the like. But my point only being, I started at the Urban League in 1996, running a direct service program as a social worker, and then moved through the ranks of programmatic service into the president and CEO role in 2006, 2007.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And I've seen the growth in the organization under your leadership, Dr. G.
I appreciate that.
So what advice would you give a woman right now who is trying to climb that career ladder the way you did at the Urban League?
Yeah. I would say, and I'm even looking at it now with the staff that we have on board, a lot of staff coming in now that were just like me, fresh off of a master's degree, things like that. What is it going to take for them to be successful in this new market, this new environment? And I think one of the things, particularly for women, that I would say that is important, that is very much affected or has been affected by the pandemic, is networking, right? A lot of women, and there are a lot of articles about this, that even in a post-pandemic, the working from home and, not necessarily being in office space where you get noticed and you're talking to other colleagues and you're networking, many of us may still be choosing to work in that capacity because it's very convenient, for us with our families and the like, which is fine. So therefore, we got to be very conscious about the way in which we're building out our network, right? So that is something that's really important. I have to say that if it had not been, even to this day, people speaking my name in rooms that I will never be in, never be invited into, but because they speak my name into those rooms, opportunities professionally and personally for the Urban League, for anything that is attached to me, happens. And that is because of being very intentional about building a network. The other thing about building a network that I would say to our women today is that you can't build a network selfishly. Right? There's so much about our world today that is so I-driven, right? Like, this is what I want and this is what I need, etc. When you really build authentic networks, it's about, what can I do to be helpful to you? If you end every conversation with, what can I do to help you? It changes the dynamics of the conversation. It begins to change the dynamics of the relationship. So I would say, in terms of climbing the ladder, building your network, building an authentic network so that you can call on them and they can call on you when that time is necessary. And as you know, I'll be texting you and be like, hey, what do you think about X? You don't get responses from people you don't have relationships with, right?
Right.
And the last piece I would say, in terms of climbing the ladder, etc., two things. Get your skills together.
Master it. Yes.
Master it, right? Whatever those skills are, if you don't feel like you're the best speaker or communicator, then you got to keep doing it, right? You can't just be like, oh, I'm just not good at it, so I'm just not going to do it. That's not going to get you up. I'm not really good at numbers, right? Accounting, etc. Okay, not a problem. What class are you going to take? Right? You don't need to be an accountant, but you need to know what those numbers look like. Like I say to people every time, my complexion looks beautiful actually in orange, but not an orange jumpsuit. So we ain't doing this to nobody, right?
You and I both, Dr. G.
So I'm going to take this class so that I know what's in these books, right? But I will never be your chief financial officer. You don't want me to do that. You want me more on the development side, the fundraising side, the operation side, but you still got to know the skills, right? And then the last piece I would say, Melissa, is know your worth. Know your worth.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who will want you to do things, desire you to do things, and you got to know what your worth is. And that worth sometimes is a dollar value, right? Knowing how to negotiate that. But your worth is so much more than the dollar, right? Your worth is, how am I going to show up in this room? How am I going to be positioned in this room, right? So once you know your worth, you're going to position yourself with humility where it is that you feel that you need to be.
Oh, I love that. And those 4 tips really work well, not just for women looking to climb the career ladder, but for entrepreneurs as well.
Absolutely.
Building your network, authentic network, and then, adding value to folks, mastering your skill, and then knowing your worth. Because when you know your worth, then you will automatically position yourself to accept nothing less.
Nothing less. Those shoulders get pushed back real quick.
Yes.
Like, no, that doesn't equate. So let's have a different conversation. And it doesn't always mean walking away from the conversation, right? Sometimes it might simply mean we need to sit down and have a different conversation, right? Because sometimes we just throw our hands up and, I don't want to be bothered. But that's the process, right? Of letting people know what you believe your worth is. And when they see it differently, we also have to be open to listening to people who want to pour in. Because I've had people, I give people permission to pull my coattail and be like, if you see me running off the edge, I need you to pull me back, right? Because nobody is perfect. But you have to have those people in your life that you've given permission to say, come here, little girl, sit down. Right. So I've been married for 27 years. We've been together for 30 years. Right. My parents have been married for 67 years. And my in-laws have been married for 53 years or going on 53. I'm trying to get there. Right. So I need to allow myself to be humble, to talk to women who have worked through relationships that 7 and 50 years, right? That have raised their children and still have their right mind, right? So we also have to be humble to have people in our lives who are willing to pull us and say, sit down here, I need to talk to you. And then us doing that for that next generation.
I love that. Your kitchen cabinet is what First Lady, our former First Lady, calls it in her book. That's powerful. So one of the things that I admire most about you, and I think anytime that I've ever called you to ask you for advice, it's a lot of times around either leadership or having difficult conversations. I experience you as a person who cares deeply about your team and who leads from a place of integrity and from a place of, we're in this thing together.
Yeah.
Could you share some of your leadership philosophies with us?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent. If you ever come to my office, it's filled with books. And people often ask me, have you read all of them? Well, not all of them. I've thumbed through most of them, but there are some that I have read. As you know, one of the books that I have for my team this year is a book called Traction. So all my people leaders, that means anybody who is touching people here at the Urban League, they have to read this book and actually use it as a part of my leadership retreats on a quarterly basis, which again, thank you for being a part of the most recent one. So I would say a couple of tips. One of the things that's really important to me as a leader is exactly as you described. So I have a strategy that actually came to me years ago, is to write a leadership eulogy. And what a leadership eulogy is, we all know, eulogy.
I need one of those. Hold on,
Yes.
let me write that down for me. Forget about the audience. This one's for me right now.
So the eulogy came about because at the passing of my husband's grandfather, who was 90 plus years old, he had lived here in the United States for a part of his life, but majority of his life had been in Jamaica. So, if you're from the Caribbean, you have these series of funerals that you go to, right? So the funeral here, the funeral in Kingston, the funeral in Balaclava, And I'm sitting there like, wow, this is a lot, right? But great to honor him. But the thing that I left with was in every single one of those spaces, they spoke about him the same way. And I thought to myself, what would it look like if we wrote, it could be in any way, it could be leadership, it could be any way, but in this case, leadership eulogy, where what do I want people to say about me when I no longer have a voice to defend it? What do I want them to say about my leadership when I can't get up and say, nope, you're wrong, this is the right information, so forth and the like. So whatever that is, then my thoughts, my words, my actions every day have to align to whatever that is. So the exercise that I do with my staff is that I have them write their leadership eulogy for the Urban League. So when you're no longer here, what do you want people to say about you? And everybody writes these glowing eulogies, like, in essence, we walk on water, right? And then, of course, the conversation after is, if this is what you truly want people to say, are your thoughts, your words, and your actions aligning
with them?
Right? Aligning with those things. If you were to ask somebody today, would they say that? And there's a reason why, and I would cut it short by not giving all why I got there. But initially in my leadership at the Urban League, back in 1997, 1998, as a young vice president in my 20s, people older than me, I was so afraid of conflict, Melissa. I didn't like it, didn't embrace it. So I would just go into rooms and just go, just blow up, right? But it wasn't for everybody. It was for two people in the room. But because I didn't like conflict, didn't appreciate the value proposition that difference in conflict can be worked out and worked through, I created an environment that wasn't what I wanted my leadership eulogy to be. So once I wrote eulogy, back in that time, when I was challenged around, who are you really? You're given this opportunity to lead people. Who are you really? I began to then really get into who I wanted to be. And the thing that I want people to always leave my presence with is with their dignity intact, always. Doesn't matter if we disagree. It doesn't matter if we agree, and everything else in between. Everybody needs to leave with their dignity intact, because you can imagine that I deal on from the streets to the sweeps.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? And I always want people to feel that. I always want people to know that at the end of the day, that when I make decisions for the whole. It is not for me personally. It's not for one person or the like. So at some point, I'm going to make a decision that you're not going to like, because it wasn't about you. It wasn't about me. It's like, what is best for the whole? And when that occurs, I need us to have enough relationship that you can express your thoughts and I'll express mine, and we stay focused on the mission. And I think the other two things I would say is that I got very comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I'm fine.
Ooh, that part.
Yeah. Good. It's like, all right, I'm in rooms where sometimes I'm the only person, what person of color, woman, name it, and that, and I've learned that when I'm in those spaces that might feel uncomfortable, that I shake that feeling off, like how you taught us to like get in the idea of where those uncomfortable feelings are coming from, and knowing what it is, sitting in it and not running away from it. I've learned, to do that. And then as the last thing I would share, my grandmother said, my mother would say to me, if you want clean water, you go to the head of the fountain. So I like that philosophy. So when I have things that I need to deal with, I'm going to the head of the fountain. Like, you're the decision maker. I need to have a conversation with you, right? Because, everything else rolls down from the head. And
Yeah.
if I'm going to be working on something, I need to be able to do that together. But my hope is that when I am older and I'm walking down the street, that folks will be like, still be willing to engage with me and not run to the other side of the street, because I treated them with dignity and treated them
Oh,
with
I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. And see, that all goes back to your core values and making the time to connect with your purpose, to connect with your core values,
Mhm.
and for you to answer that very powerful question, who am I?
Yeah.
Like, how do I want to show up in the room?
Right.
And
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 I think too, when you think about that, Melissa, right? In all the rooms, in your room as a friend, in the room as a entrepreneur, business owner, a community leader, an elected official, a mother, a daughter, all these different rooms that we find ourselves in. And what I say to people, I might be in different rooms, but I'm one Germaine.
thank you.
One Germaine in these
Yeah.
different rooms. And I need to be consistent in all those rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Consistent and authentic. And the only way for you to really be authentic is if you take the time to figure out who you are.
Absolutely.
And I find that sometimes we're so busy, in this grind culture, that we forget to take the time to breathe, to fill our cups, to feed our soul, and to check in with ourselves.
Yeah.
Man, this has been such a powerful conversation,
I love
Dr.
chatting
G.
with you, getting things
Yeah.
done. I love it.
A powerful conversation. So very quickly, could you share again, if somebody wanted to access services at the Broward, at the Urban League, could you share with us what those services are? I know you talked a little bit about your mission earlier, but what can we reach out to you for?
Right. So if you're out there in community and you are ready to, advance your business, after school programs, certifications like skills training, health issues that you might be having, anything in those buckets of education, entrepreneurship, jobs, justice, housing, health, you want to purchase a new home in this very, interesting market, Urban League is here for you. So you can check out all our services and all of our programs at www.ulbroward.org. All of our programs and services are listed there. You can feel free to call the front desk. I know the number is on the screen, 954-584-0777, and we will be happy to share with you what we have available. And we believe that strong families make strong communities. So we are not only interested in just one part of your family, we want to help your entire family be more resilient. So that's why we want to connect all those dots to help your family being able to, be as resilient and self-sufficient and as powerful as you can be.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. G, for sharing your time with us this morning. I really appreciate you. And not only because of your organization serving Broward County, but also because you're Lauderhill resident. So I really appreciate you personally and
The only
professionally
city
as
I've
well.
ever lived in all the years I've lived here.
I love you. Thank you so much, Dr. G.
Thanks. Thank you, Melissa.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode of the Dunn Wisdom Morning Show. I want to remind you, if you haven't already registered, please go to sixfigurewomeninbusiness.com. My Six Figure Women in Business Summit is scheduled for March 24th and 25th at our beautiful Shadow Mar Golf Resort in Lauderhill. This is where we are going to pour into you. I have a bunch of amazing women who are going to join me on stage as we talk about money, mindset, and of course, marketing. So remember, be kind and loving to yourself today. You absolutely deserve it. Be well, everyone.